Hi, Misha here, and in the past I have shown you this aircraft. This is the English Electric Canberra, and this is the B-2 from the Signal Reconnaissance Group used by the RAF. I've also shown you this version. This is the Canberra B-57A for interdictor, and this one was actually a test model that I showed in the Christmas video last year. And today I wanted to talk about another variant made under license in America. This is the Martin B-57. Specifically, this is an RB57A photo reconnaissance. And this is an interesting aircraft for what it is and its place in history. All three models are 1/72 scale diecast from Corgi. And this one came from Aikens, but kind of funnily enough, to get an American Canberra, I had to order this on eBay and have it brought in from the United Kingdom a few months ago. It is a very interesting story. In 1950, America had a gap in the Air Force that some recognized. It did not have a tactical medium bomber / interdictor. In World War II, this had been the role of the Douglas A-20 and later A-26. And the A-26, now renamed B-26, not to be confused with Martin's own B-26 Marauder, was still in service, but this was a piston. This was a propeller plane in the jet age. Some thought that they really would need a jet equivalent to the A-26 B-26. It's worth pointing out that the Korean War got in the way, and they did use the B-26 in the Korean War, but after the MiG-15 came in, the B-26 definitely suffered. It had some success at night, and it had some success still being used as a nighttime interdictor, but it was clear that jets were the future. Luckily, work had already kind of started moving to fill the gap. In August of 1950, the U.S. Air Force arranged a private demonstration of the British English Electric Canberra. It had flown about a year earlier for the first time, but it was still not officially in RAF service, so this was an early demo. The Americans were quite impressed with what they saw. Planes like this. And so in September of 1950, the U.S. Air Force officially put out a requirement for a new medium tactical bomber with secondary reconnaissance ability. It had some requirements. For example, it needed to be able to get up to at least 630 miles per hour, have a maximum altitude of at least 40,000 feet, be all-weather capable, and maybe most important, it had to be a design that was already developed, or at least far along in development. And quite interestingly, foreign designs were allowed. And this was put in specifically for the Canberra because it seems clear from the outset that that's what America was wanting. But the government, Congress, the powers that be, insisted the Air Force hold open competition. So, in late February of 1951, just such a thing happened. The British flew over, under its own power, a B-2 Canberra, a few days before the tests. Canada also submitted a design, its own CF-100, and 3 American designs were in the fly-off, including Martin's own XB-51 and North American's XB-45, as well as the AJ Savage. But really it was no contest for a couple of reasons. For one, the specifications were laid out nearly to complement what the Canberra was best at, but also the Canberra was the only one of the designs that was ready to go, that was finished, because it was entering RAF service that April. So it was basically a finished product. So, declared the winner at the beginning of March, Martin and English Electric began negotiations for Martin to produce it under license. This worked out well for everyone involved. English Electric was already under great pressure to produce Canberras for the RAF, as well as Australia and others, hence the name, for the Korean War, which was, lots of people needing planes then. And it helped Martin out, of course. And it helped out the American political end with the whole not made here. At least even if it could be said it wasn't designed here, at least it would be made here in Maryland by Americans. So, all in all, a good deal. Late in March, the U.S. Air Force ordered 250 planes designated as the B-57A bomber. Then in April, the agreement between Martin and English Electric was finalized. And that summer, a second aircraft was sent over to be used as a pattern and testing aircraft, which was good because in December of 1951, the first pattern aircraft, the first B-2, actually was involved in a crash, killing one of the crew. This obviously led to some political backlash, but it turns out it was basically operator error. There was improper refueling and handling on the ground, primarily, that led to the things. So the program progressed into 1952, and the Martin manufactured Canberra prototype first flew in July of 1953. And then it was accepted officially into service a month later by the Air Force, but it came too late for involvement in the Korean War. The initial version, the B-57A, was nearly exactly like the B-2, but rather than using the Avon engine, it used a license-produced version of the British Sapphire engine. This was done to give it a little bit better lift ability and also better ability to operate in hot environments. Another large change, they went from a crew of 3 to just 2. You have your pilot and you have your navigator in a kind of uniquely arranged cockpit. And then for bombing, the navigator would crawl down into this nose. Another major change was with the bomb bay itself. The British version used a clamshell type bay. It could hold about 6,000 pounds internally. The American version actually had a rotating door type bomb bay, which was kind of carried over from Martin's own XB51. This gave it a lower capacity of about 4,500 pounds, smaller room, less room. But on the other hand, it gave more room for fuel tanks, so kind of a win-lose. And more importantly, the rotating bay would not disrupt airflow like the clamshell for high-speed launch. The other specs of the aircraft were about 65.5 feet long. We have a wingspan of just over 64 feet, so it's nearly as wide as it is long. They didn't quite meet their speed requirements. This had a max speed of just shy of 600 miles per hour. But on the other hand, it had a maximum altitude of 45,000 feet, so exceeding. It was all-weather capable. And it had a secondary ability to be reconnaissance, which is good. Because the initial batch was 75 aircraft out of the initial 250 ordered by the Air Force. Only 8 were actually B-57A bombers. The rest were built as RB57A reconnaissance because the B-57A bomber was not considered combat worthy. So those 8 were basically used for testing and training. So early on I had better success as a photo reconnaissance. These were introduced into service in 1954 and actually be stationed in West Germany, Japan, and elsewhere around the world. As for the other versions, the B-57B would be an improved version introduced in 1954. At least it would first fly that July. It would have what they considered a more fighter-style cockpit, tandem seating, and it would have 2 underwing hard points per each wing, so a total of 4. This kind of gained back some of its cargo payload ability. The underwing hardpoints could hold over 2,800 pounds, meaning that it could carry about 8,300. Meaning it could carry about 7,300 maximum, getting it quite close to the British. Because when they went to the B6, they introduced a couple of underwing hardpoints as well. They also got rid of the fuel tanks on the wingtips, giving more internal fuel tankage. This could carry a maximum of 8,000 pounds, only 2,000 pounds under the wings, but that 6,000 pounds in its bomb bay kind of made up for it. The B variant of the Martin also had guns mounted in the wings. Originally it was 8 50 calibers, but very quickly this was changed to 4 20mm cannon. It's worth pointing out that while the British never mounted guns in the wings, they did adopt insert for the bomb bay that gave 4 20mm cannons for more of the interdictor role. They also made machine gun pods that could be mounted on the hard points of the B6 and later B8. They could also, both versions, have unguided rockets under the wings. And the B-57B would be more successful. They were going to build the full 250-piece order, 75 already built, so 175 more. But they stopped manufacture at 102 because they ran out of money. All the changes to go to the B sucked up a lot of the budget. So, you know how it goes. That said, in 1955, with more budget, The Air Force was happy enough with Martin that they ordered another 100 B-57Bs. They also ordered 38 B-57C trainers and 20 B-57D, or I should rather say RB57D reconnaissance versions that had a bigger wing than this A model here, and a few other changes. The final order for American Canberras was 68 B-57E target tugs. This would bring the total manufacturing up to 403, with the last ones delivered in 1957. These would be, like I said, stationed throughout Europe and other places. Really, a lot of them would start to be replaced in 1957, 1958 by newer planes, like the reconnaissance by the U-2, the bomber variants by the F-100 in some cases, or other jet bombers. But enough hung on. And as time went on, its bomber role was reduced more and more, and its interdictor ground attack role was emphasized more and more. These were used early in Vietnam, 1964 and 1965, to attack targets. In addition to their wing guns and rockets, some of them would have a huge, just like cluster machine guns inserted into the bomb bay as a pack, just to rain lead on the ground. The plane was respected for its durability and dependability. It was relatively light on the maintenance department, at least compared to the other jets of that day. But it did have some problems with the engines, especially early on. And it wasn't especially fast or anything. So, served its purpose. Really, by the late 60s, most were out of service, but some were upgraded. For example, some of the photo reconnaissance versions were upgraded to the RB57F, and a night attack version was upgraded from some older planes as the B-57G. These would be the last ones really messed with by Martin. In fact, after this, Martin would get out of military aircraft and focus on civilian in general. And by the 70s, most of the combat versions were out, but some of the RB-57s were still flying, and the Air Force retired its last ones in 1983. These were really just used by the U.S. They were exported a little bit afterwards. Thailand and Pakistan are a couple of foreign users. But, 403, pretty respectable number. And, interestingly, this was America's first jet bomber to drop bombs in combat. It was also America's last tactical bomber. All the others have been strategic. The first foreign design to be bought and fielded since World War I, back with the DH-4. So even though it's a bit of a footnote, it had a lot of firsts and lasts. Of course, in England, it would continue on mostly in the reconnaissance all the way through the Second Iraq War in 2003, and the last Canberras weren't stood down until 2006. 900 would be produced in the UK, and another 48 in Australia under license. But that's a story for another day. I just thought it would be neat to have an American Canberra, and there are differences in the model. For example, the engines. The cones are different shape. It has this black paint, which was kind of an early nighttime stealth coating. I mean, it wasn't stealthy, it just was non-reflective to not get picked out in spotlights as easy. It also has a few different antennae and tubes and what have you. And of course it has the rotating versus just opening bomb bay. It could actually be flown by a single person. The navigator, while very helpful, was not strictly speaking necessary. These Corgi models are pretty chunky, pretty heavy. Most all metal, wings, main body. Your horizontals are plastic, your vertical is metal. They have the option of gear up or down as well. And they have done several over the years, but they haven't done many in quite a while. So I kind of took the models I could get. Well, with that said, hope you enjoyed this. If you could, like, share, and subscribe. And if you like bombers, I've got a whole playlist of bombery related stuff. You might check that out. Well, with that, this is Misha. And I'll catch you very soon next time.